Okay, well, last week we were talking about the leadership in energy and environmental design. LEED is a green building rating system, right? Again, it helps us quantify how green or how sustainable our building is. We looked at the rating system has credit categories, kind of groups of credits that are organized around different topic areas. Within each of those credit categories, there are prerequisites and credits. Again, prerequisites are things that you have to do, you must do. The credits are things that you can do, but obviously you have to get enough credits to get the score to where you want it to be. And again, at the bottom you see, certified is 40 points, silver is 50, gold is 60, platinum is 80 to 110, right? So these are points on a 110 point scale. More points is better. Right, all credits are worth at least 1 point. Credits are weighted differently. Right, the credits are weighted on how effectively they meet the goals that we saw last week. Right, obviously the mitigating the impacts of climate change, reducing CO2 is an important goal. So if you look at the goals, you'll see there's a lot of points available in energy and atmosphere related to making the building more efficient. Right, so LEED values those strategies that reduce the impacts on climate change and those with the greatest benefits for indoor environmental quality. Right, and conserving water is important as well. Right, water is an invaluable resource. We can't live without it. So reducing water consumption is weighted appropriately. Right, indoor environmental quality is weighted well because we've talked about the fact that we spend a lot of time in buildings, right? So we want to make sure that the environment in our buildings is healthy and comfortable and appropriate for what's going on in that building. Again, LEED has some, like any, I don't want to call it a game, but like anything that you're keeping score on, there's certain rules, right? So LEED has some rules, right? The prerequisites is a rule, right? The prerequisites are meant to make sure that you tackle things that are most important. LEED also has some MPRs or minimum program requirements. Does somebody have a question? I'm hearing some noise. No worries, James.
Sorry, that was me.
Okay, no problem. Again, if you have a question, put it in the chat, shout it out, and I'll do my best to answer it. I think I still owe some answers from last week, which I didn't get around to, but I haven't forgotten. They're written in my notes here. So again, there are a few kind of minimum requirements for LEED, right? There must be a permanent location, right? Must be constructed and operated on a permanent location, right? So we're not looking at temporary structures. We're looking at permanent structures. We have to have reasonable boundaries. So we have to describe what the boundary of our project is. And we have to include all the contiguous, right? Contiguous means everything that's adjacent to our building site that's associated with the project and supports its operations, right? So we can't say, oh, let's look at the building and ignore the parking lot, because the parking lot's going to cause a lot of stormwater runoff. We don't want we don't want to be penalized for that, right? The parking lot is part of the building, so we have to include that as well. So all the contiguous, all the things on the site that relate to the building and support its operations need to be included. The other is that some minimum size requirements as shown there, and realistically, there is a certain amount of time and effort and professional staff time that's required to put a LEED project together. So you're generally going to spend that time and attention on projects of a decent size. Again, I think I mentioned before that in one of my previous jobs in my career, I was responsible for getting a bunch of buildings certified. I worked for a large financial institution, and my company had a goal of achieving LEED certification on so many square feet of its total portfolio. So one of the things we looked at the size of each building, and we tended to focus our efforts on the larger properties because that would give us more of a benefit. Yes, Fred.
So when you say larger properties, like what kind of properties do you mean by that?
In my case, again, I worked for a bank, so we had, obviously you're familiar with a branch bank, but banks have lots of other operations that go along with it. So we tended to focus efforts on our call centers. Call centers are the places where the people pick up the phone, right? When you call your bank and say, oh, somebody put a crazy charge on my credit card, right? There's a building someplace where the person sits there and answers the phone when you call them. So, those buildings tended to be fairly large, a couple 100,000 square feet. So we were doing LEED O&M, or operations and maintenance, on existing buildings. So we tended to focus on those larger buildings because it gave us more bang for the effort that we put in to get those buildings LEED certified.
How big were they? Like,
oh, I would say 100,000 square feet is a typical call center size.
so these are just rooms, just a bunch of rooms?
Yeah,
Or
it's an office building, right? It's an office building, but instead of the call center floor would have lots of people sitting in cubicles talking on the telephone, right? Looks no different than an office building, but these are people whose job it is to answer customers' questions on the phone.
oh wow, I never knew that.
So again, the other thing, I think when we were talking about different building rating systems a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned Energy Star, right? In the LEED O&M rating system, you get points for energy performance. So again, we would, part of what I did as an energy manager is we, looked at a whole group of buildings, a whole portfolio of buildings, to find our best and worst performers, right? Our best performing buildings were ones that we decided to go after LEED certification for, and our poorly performing buildings were the ones that we decided we needed to put some focus on to improve their energy performance. So we used Energy Star as kind of a tool to identify our best and worst performers. Any other questions? Good question, Fred. Right. So again, in the rating system, we're going to want to know what the property line is, right? Well, that's pretty obvious what that means. What the what the boundary line for the project is and what the footprint of the building is. Those are all, I think, terms that you could understand, right? But again, we want to make sure that when we put our documentation in and we work on our project, that we clearly define what the scope of our efforts are. In the process of getting a building LEED certified in any one of these rating systems, there is an online, a web-based tool. Sorry, that should be tool, not toll. A web-based tool that's used to manage the certification process, basically where you upload information about the project. And basically you're going to be filling in forms or templates online that describe the project and its attributes, and that it's what the people on the other end, right, the GBCI, the Green Building Certification Institute, right, the folks who are reviewing your application, it's what they're going to use to, see how well your project is scoring against the points in the rating system. Right, so again, like any other project, you'll have a project plan or a work plan. I mean, here's a typical work plan for a LEED certification project. Right, discovery phase, collecting information. Probably early on would be somewhere probably at the beginning of this would be setting the goal, right? In my case, in my previous job, right, our company set a goal of achieving LEED certification on, I forgot what it was now, maybe 25% of our building square footage. So, the higher ups set a goal and, rolled out to me and my team to go out and figure out how to achieve that goal, right? That's a typical things that happens in companies, right? The higher up set goals, and then the goals roll down to the folks that actually have to figure out and get things done. So in our case, we put a plan together. In our case, we were certifying existing buildings, so we used the LEED existing building O&M system, right? Depending on the nature of the project, you might use a different rating system. Make sure that we meet the minimum program requirements, fine tune those goals. If it's a BD&C or building design and construction, new construction or major renovation, right? We talked about the integrative design process, but we want to make it clear up front what our goals are in terms of the performance of the building, and then make sure all the team members are working together to achieve those goals. Assign roles and responsibilities. Again, who's ever the leader of the team is going to make sure that all the parts and pieces get covered, right? That the folks on the design team know that hey, you're responsible for building envelope design, and the lighting designer's got to do this, and the mechanical engineer has to do that, right? Make sure everyone knows their role and is working together. Again, in the case of new construction, right, this would be done along with the design process. In my case, or my previous experience doing existing building projects, again, we had documentation that we had to collect, things that we had to go out and ask that the property managers or the chief engineer or his staff at the building, they collect some information that demonstrates how you're doing X, Y, and Z, and send it to us so we can use it for your LEED certification. Good question, Ayana. I will have to look that up at the break. I believe it is based on the square footage, and I'm not sure that I have it in the slides here. So I will answer that question either tonight if I get to it, or next week when we talk about it again. But yes, I asked the question: what are the fees? And this is not it's not free, right? You're as an owner or as an institution, right? You have costs associated with two things. Number one would be the professional time or staff resources that it takes to participate in the process, and number two would be the fees that are paid to the USGBC for certification. Again, in the company I worked for previously, we were a corporate member of LEED, and we essentially got a volume discount, right? We said we're going to bring you. We did it in terms of branch banks. We're going to bring you 50 branch banks that are all going to be fairly similar to each other. So we'll pre-certify buildings that have certain attributes. But yes, I'm losing my voice here. The fee is basically based on the project size, but I will answer the question specifically. Good question. I would say yes, that is correct. Ayana asked, is the fee is it preventing some types of buildings from being certified? I would say yes. I think that's I think that might be one of the knocks against the LEED system, is that it does cost money, and it may dissuade certain types of projects from being able to afford to go after this. So yeah, it's not a, and you were considering a book, Ayana, I think the Yudelson book, which I have to look and see. Right? Reinventing Green Buildings is one of the books you were considering. Yeah, I think that might be one of the arguments that the author makes in that book. But even though the system is imperfect, it's what is out there, and it's certainly by far the most common means out there to drive and certify green buildings. So even though it's imperfect, it's the best thing going. Again, remember, BD&C is building design and construction. ID&C is indoor design and construction, right? That's that's kind of core and shell. And O&M is operation and maintenance. So the things related to BD&C or ID&C related to new construction or major renovation, a project is certified based on its design and construction as a green building. In O&M, we're looking at an existing building. We're certifying it for a snapshot in time, for a period in time, for a performance period. So we're measuring the building's performance over a period of time. Obviously, in the case of new construction or major renovation, right, we don't necessarily have that period of time when the building is occupied. So we look at it as design and construction. In the BD&C or ID&C, right, where we're looking at design and construction, you can do what's called an optional design review, right? So you can split the certification in two pieces, look at the design related aspects first, and then the construction related aspects. In the case of O&M, we're not designing and building something because the building already exists. We submit for certification after that performance period is completed. Right, so how long does this, right, aside from all the efforts that the project team is going to be undertaken, right, you see there's some back and forth here. You submit your information, and the folks at the GBCI have time to review that and respond to it, and there's basically a back and forth process. You know, as you see, that can drag on for some time, but again, this is the certification process as it currently exists. Any questions, folks? You guys are quiet tonight. I thought you would have lots of questions for Michelle. So, any type of equipment. Fred asked, did I use any type of equipment when I went out to certify buildings? Yes, but it would be the equipment equipment that's used to improve the building's performance, right? Because part of what we had to do in LEED O&M, you know, was to improve the energy performance of the buildings that didn't perform quite as well, right? We looked at our Energy Star scores. So we may have done some work in the building to improve its energy performance, right? We may have retrofitted the lighting system in the buildings, right? We may have put in some new control systems to control the heating and the air conditioning, right? We made some physical improvements in the building to increase to decrease their energy consumption and increase their Energy Star score. So that was part of the work that we did in the LEED O&M program. We also, since the rating system has things related to waste management, you know, there were some waste management procedures that had to be put in place, some green cleaning procedures, right? All those procedures got rolled out to the staff, and we had to show that they were in force before we went into our performance period. Yes, Tyler. Do you have a question, Tyler? Like you were raising your hand.
Sorry, that hit the button on accident. My bad.
No worries. No worries. A lot of buttons here. So, okay. Good questions, Fred and Ayana. Ayana, I owe you some answers. Fred, more than happy to tell you more about, you know, my previous work. Again, you know, I've been in this field for a long time, you know, always as an energy manager, right? So I'm a mechanical engineer by training. So my career has always been about finding ways to make buildings more efficient. So that was kind of the way that I approached the LEED O&M process, certification process. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. It's almost 10 minutes to the hour. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to turn on the quiz. It'll be under, it should be under week number 5. So I'm going to turn the quiz on. It'll take you, there's 12 questions. I've given you 15 minutes, but it should go a lot faster than that. But I'll turn the quiz on, and you can either jump on it now and take your break, or take your break first and jump on it later. So we'll come back. I will look for folks to come back about 8:15. So let me go and jump screens here and turn the quiz Sorry, the quiz is over in week 6. It should be the first item in week number 6. So again, I think the instructions should come up. You know, you'll see the questions one at a time. You cannot backtrack. And once you start, you have to finish. It should be under week number 6, Chris. Under class materials, week 6, yes. I just turned it on, so hopefully you're seeing it. So again, up to you. You can take your break and do the quiz, or do the quiz and take your break. I'll be standing by here in case folks have any questions. So if you have a question, you know, shout it out, put it in the chat, send me an email. And then again, we'll get back together again at 8:15.